All right, as you're writing that title down, what's a converse? Kind of an opposite. What do we mean? Tell me a little bit more. Not just opposite.
Like to say the Pythagorean theorem is like reverse.
Okay, tell me, Karen?
We like C equals, C squared equals A squared plus B squared.
Oh, instead of a squared plus b squared equals c squared, she's thinking c squared equals a squared plus b squared. Or not quite.
Or if we were doing a sentence.
That would be actually, remember, well, it'd be close to the symmetric property where you take the left and the right sides and switch it. That would kind of be the symmetric property. Okay, when we're talking converses, we're talking about an if-then statement. If it is sunny, then it is warm. Converse would be, if it is warm, then it is sunny. Okay, so converses we dealt with if-thens. So what is our Pythagorean theorem if you say it in if-then? What do you have to have to start the Pythagorean theorem?
A squared plus B squared.
Equals C squared.
Then what? What do you have to have, or what is your diagram in order to use the Pythagorean theorem? What kind of triangle? A right triangle.
If it is a right triangle, then
Yeah. If it is a right triangle, then a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That's really how the Pythagorean theorem goes. Okay, so if there's a right triangle, then a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Converse would be if a squared plus b squared equals c squared, then it's a right triangle. So we would be going backwards. What we're going to do is try and use three lengths in the equation, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and then see if those numbers do work in that equation. Our conclusion is that's going to be a right triangle. And then if it's not equal, we're going to figure out is it an acute triangle or an obtuse triangle. So we're going to be taking lengths and figuring out what the triangle is, instead of starting with a triangle and seeing what the missing lengths are. So let's go back to what we were doing yesterday. Okay, can these side lengths form a triangle? Well, let's try 12, 9, and 15. Okay, how do I decide whether they will form a triangle from yesterday's lesson? Okay, when you add them together, right? Okay, so 12 plus 9 has to be greater than 15. We're trying to decide, is that true? 21 is greater than 15? And that's yes. Now she said the two smaller ones, that is your key to whether it's yes or no. It really is true for all combinations. If we took the two big ones and added, it needs to be bigger than 9 in this case. 27 is bigger than 9. Yeah, that's always going to happen when you use the bigger ones and add together. And which ones haven't I used? 9 and 15. 9 and 15 have to be added together to be bigger than 12. And 24 is bigger than 12. So that's going to be a yes also. The key one is the one that she mentioned, but it is true about all of them, that when you add two sides, it's always more than the other side. Okay, then in part of what I did with you yesterday, I asked you to draw me what the triangle would look like. So what kind of a triangle is this? You know, one side, the longest side in our picture is going to be 15. But I guess I'm not sure if it looks like this, you know, with a 15 here, a 9 and a 12. Or is it open a little bit wider, so it's more of an, what kind of triangle? Obtuse? Is it obtuse? Or is it, let's see, to make it look acute, I think I'm going to have to switch where I put, no, that doesn't look acute. How would it look if it's acute? That's probably not real realistic, but 15, 9, and 12, is it acute? Well, let's try those numbers in the Pythagorean theorem. Now, because it could maybe look all of those ways, you have to figure out which one's the right one. So let's try a squared plus b squared equals c squared and see if that works then I would know it's a right triangle. If it doesn't, we're gonna have to do some more thinking. So which number would we use for A, B, and C?
A would be the 9,
I'm gonna use 9 as the A,
B as in 12,
B as in 12,
and C.
okay? Now your A and B, she could switch those, but the C always has to be the longest side. Okay, so let's try 9 squared plus 12 squared compared to 15 squared. I'm gonna put a circle so that I'm trying to figure out if it's equal or not. What's 9 squared?
81,
81? 12 squared?
44,
Added together?
225,
What is 15 squared?
225.
225? So it's equal. So A squared plus B squared does equal C squared. What kind of a triangle does that have to be? It's a right triangle. Okay. So it did not look like this one or this one. It really would make a right triangle because those numbers satisfied the Pythagorean theorem. So that's what I was just talking about, what type of triangle. So the converse of the Pythagorean theorem is if the numbers A squared, if you want to just write the bottom one instead of the words up at the top, that probably makes sense. The top says if the square of the length of the longest side of a triangle is equal to the sum of the squares of the lengths of the other two sides, then the triangle is a right triangle. Well, as long as you know that C has to be the longest side, and maybe we'll make a note about that, the equation part probably makes a little bit more sense. So if A squared plus B squared equals C squared, then they form a right triangle. And I'm going to put C has to be the longest side, or the longest length. The other two, it doesn't matter. But we have to watch out for the tricky ones that won't even make a triangle. When we test for making the triangle, we don't do the squaring. That's just when we test what kind of triangle. So there's going to be 2 steps in some of the problems that you'll be doing. Anyone need a calculator to do squaring of some numbers? You should come get one if you need one. I've got 4 laying here. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's see. Is anyone still using these notes? Are you writing just the bottom part? No? Okay. Why don't you jump to just this bottom sentence? While they're finishing their notes, let's do one. Let's go with 6, 8, and 10. Will that make a right triangle?
Well, it makes a triangle. We don't know if
It makes a triangle, but you don't know which kind? Now, how did you decide that it makes a triangle?
6 plus 8 is greater than 10.
Okay, 6 plus 8 is greater than 10, so yes, it makes a triangle. But that doesn't tell me what kind. So what do I do, Sydney, to figure out which kind? Okay, so 6 squared plus 8 squared compared to 10 squared. 36 plus 64. That is 100. 10 squared is 100, so it's equal. So is it a right triangle?
Yes.
Yes, it's a right triangle. Remember that Pythagorean triple, 6, 8, 10? I thought maybe that's what some of you were thinking when you came up with it very quickly.
So does that mean that all Pythagorean are right?
Yes. That's why it's a Pythagorean triple, because it makes a right triangle. It works in a Pythagorean theorem. So you might recognize some of those numbers. Okay, my next screen is about what happens if it's not equal. Okay, because if I would change this to the numbers 6, 8, and 11, is that gonna make a triangle?
Yes.
Yes, it makes a triangle. Is it gonna make a right triangle? Okay, so we had 36 and 64, this was 100, this was 121. Okay, so
Would that be like
this,
this triangle?
is it gonna be an acute or an obtuse? Well, let me show you here something, I'm just gonna hold a couple markers. Okay, if I had a right triangle, here's my right angle and here's this last side. Okay, it worked when this last side was 10, right? But now I'm making it 11. So instead of connecting like that, wouldn't this one have to tip out some more because this side got a little bit longer? So what kind of an angle? Obtuse, so that's gonna make an obtuse triangle. So which part was bigger? Yeah, the c squared got bigger. So that's gonna make a bigger angle, so it's gonna make an obtuse triangle. So then just the reverse will happen if, okay, we've got our right angle, this was 10, if I make this only 9. It's gonna have to close in some, so it's gonna be an acute triangle. So that's what my next screen is about. Okay, so if in a triangle with the longest side of C, if the c squared is smaller than the a squared plus b squared, it's going to form an acute triangle. If c squared is equal to a squared plus b squared, then it's a right triangle. If the c squared is larger than a squared plus b squared, it's going to make an obtuse triangle. So you're going to be figuring out if it makes a triangle and what kind of a triangle it will make. Probably take those notes with like the less than symbol or the greater than symbol if you're comfortable with that. I avoided those because some students don't really know or aren't confident in which is which. So I wrote it with the word smaller and larger. I think this lesson today is the last one for the chapter. So we'll review on Tuesday and test on Wednesday.
Another
A test for the whole chapter. After 2 days of the test. Sorry. I thought that it would be better to do yesterday and today in 2 days instead of one, review and then test on Tuesday and then.
No, that would not.
I think that was gonna be a good idea. So we stretched it out a little bit. Okay, do we have the notes finished? Probably not quite. I wonder why there's so many tests that fell on Wednesday. It's not quite the end of the chapter. Well, use your Friday and Monday wisely. Yeah.
I have to do art all weekend.
No. You're behind?
No.
I need to do Spanish.
Science one on top of the unit, so it's gonna be like basically grades.
Oh, I'm looking at an equations.
I think we're just about ready to try some examples. So we'll ask you to draw a picture, and you should be able to make a better picture now knowing what kind of triangle it was. Good? Okay, determine whether the side lengths form a triangle. If so, determine what type. I think I'm going to uncover just one at a time here. Okay, so let's go with the lengths of 12, 35, and 37. First decide, will it make a triangle? We're just adding two, and the key is add the two short ones. Make sure that it's more than the other side. You're done with everything? Okay, so it makes a triangle. These speed demons are figuring out what kind already. I think I'll have you write it on your marker board so that people don't hear you. I know they won't be at your marker board, but that way they are choosing what they're doing that. Okay, what kind of a triangle?
Right.
Right triangle.
Okay, a lot of them are spoiling a right triangle. They're not gonna shout out on the next one. Okay? Okay, question on coming up with right triangle. 12 squared was 144. I don't know what 35 squared was. But, okay, then when you add those together, that must have come up with the same number as 37 squared. All right, next one we're not gonna shout out. The lengths are 14, 12, and 10. First decide, will it make a triangle? So you don't do any squaring when you decide that. And then if it does, what kind of a triangle? So I need two answers. Is it a right, or is it a triangle, and if so, what type of triangle?
Wait. I mean, yes. It's not.
Okay. And you've got a completely different triangle. All right. Let me check your numbers. I don't think you added together on that one side. Well, you did square
I
them,
squared them and
but
added
you
them.
didn't add them, I think, looking at your work. Okay, show me your boards. I'm seeing some work right, but the wrong kind of triangle. I believe this one ended up acute. Yes. Now, which was the longest? 14. 14, that's your C. The other two, it really doesn't matter. So I should have seen 10 squared plus 12 squared compared to 14 squared. And I did see a lot of 100s and 144s. Added together, that's 244. 14 squared is? 196. Okay, they're obviously not equal. Okay, is the C squared bigger or smaller?
Small.
Okay, this was smaller. So what do your notes say when the C squared is smaller? It's acute. Don't go by, okay, I would put a greater than symbol, so it's an obtuse. No, in the order that we wrote this, that doesn't match up right. It's actually backwards. So is the C squared bigger or smaller as your key? All right, next one. Okay, your lengths are 26, 14, and 42. Make sure it makes a triangle, and then what type of triangle it is. two smaller sides added, longer than the other side? No. Those of you that were showing me a triangle like obtuse, no, check, it doesn't even make a triangle. Because 26 and 14 only adds up to 40. So if that other side were 42, it wouldn't reach far enough to connect and make a triangle. So no triangle. Give me a thumbs up or down if you understand that. Understand what I'm saying? Lupe, you understand what I mean as far as does it make a triangle? No? Okay. So yesterday, do you remember what we did when we tried to make a triangle? I think I gave you 4 inches, 2.5 inches, and 2 inches or something like that. And we had 4 inches, we came from this end, I'll just use 3. 3 and 2, that made a triangle. But when we tried something like 2 and 1, they weren't long enough to connect because 2 plus 1 is only 3. And if this was 4, it wouldn't be long enough no matter how far down you go. So what we discovered is when you add like the 2 short sides, it always has to be bigger than 4 to make a triangle. If 2 plus 1 is not bigger than 4, it's not going to make a triangle. So to decide if it's making a triangle, you are adding 26 and 14, making sure that it's more than 42, but it's not. It's only 40. So no triangle on that one. How about 5, 7, and 6? Will that make a triangle? And then if so, what type of triangle?
So, C is less than the other number, so we would take it.
Is the C squared?
They're supposed to be guessed too. Did you get it now? Okay, if C squared is smaller, then the other one, it's a cube. If C squared is
All right, that one
bigger,
is
then
a
it
cube.
is.
Correct. Okay, are we getting some straightened around here?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Do I need to explain on that one? Acute? Okay, let's try a couple more. What do we think? Let's 7, 14, and
23.
39? Okay, same directions. Does it make a triangle, and if so, what kind? Okay, yep.
No, Carrie, I can't.
That is a big no. It does not.
I can't read that.
Does not. Because 7 and 14 doesn't reach far enough, so no triangle. So maybe I can't just take your random numbers. 7, 10, and 14? 7, 10, and 14?
Yes.
Does that make a triangle? 7 plus 10 compared to 14? I think we're at least in business, it'll make a triangle. Now figure out what kind.
Yes. Got it.
Remember, you're trying to figure out, is the C squared bigger or smaller? You taught her well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Teacher.
149 on the other, on both sides? What numbers did you use where? You used 7 and 10. Okay, that's right. No, that's 149. Okay, what I would suggest is you don't do
That was a mix.
What?
I can't do this. I'm too big.
I can't like now. I have to look for it. Even like I mean,
Why?
I don't know. I just don't.
I missed. I'm like,
Okay, this should have been obtuse because, okay, shh, for those that need the help, 7 squared is 49, 10 squared is 100. That adds together to be 149. 14 squared is 196. They're not equal. This side is bigger. The c squared is bigger. So what kind of a triangle does that make? Obtuse. Should make an obtuse triangle. The c squared is bigger. Okay, let's try one more and then we're going to work on some homework.
oh, yes.
I wanted to try and get you some homework time. Okay, let's go with a 5, a 5, and a 5.
Oh,
Will it make a triangle, and if so, what kind? An equilateral wasn't a choice.
okay then.
Not gonna make a triangle? Well,
It will?
what's 5 plus 5?
Wait.
Wait.
Sorry.
Is 10 bigger than the other side?
Okay. Oh.
Remember, you're trying, does it make a triangle? And if so, what kind of triangle? Compared to, you're trying to see what's bigger. Okay, those look good now? Yes, yes. Not obtuse, not obtuse. Now okay, those of you that had obtuse, you got the work right. Okay, because this was 50 and this is 25. Carrie, how do they need to interpret this?
They have to add, okay, so if c squared
This
is
one?
smaller than the other, then it's a cube.
If the c squared is smaller, it has small angles. It's a cubed. If the c squared is bigger, then it has big angles, obtuse. But it's all focused on the c squared. Is the c squared bigger or is the c squared smaller? Okay? All right. What we're going to work on for the assignment, I wanted to see if you could maybe get it done before you leave. No, it's not. It's out of the Okay, I have page 203. Yes, if you're working. 2 through 8. Evens on 10 through 22. And there's some decimals at the end here. I want to make sure that you show work on these last ones, especially. Really on all of them, when you're doing that, you should show me so we can figure out if you're making a mistake. But this last part is a review. I think it's decimals, if I remember right. So show me so that I know that you didn't just use a calculator. Give me evidence. All right, you've got 15 minutes. Let's see how far we can get.